Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? It is Dylan, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to smoke some competition style pork spare ribs. The very first thing that we need to do is, this is the meat side, and if we flip these over you'll have what we call the bone side. And the very first thing that we need to do is remove this slimy membrane that comes in here, and it kind of makes a shape to where it's square at the bottom, then right about here it starts to kind of come to a point. We need to remove that membrane. The best thing to do is to actually grab yourself a paper towel as well as a knife, and what you want to do is kind of try to slide your knife in under here, and be careful not to cut yourself, guys. It's always a given, but kind of slide your knife under there and cut to where you kind of have some of this membrane skin to grab onto. Then what your paper towel does is it actually gives you some actual grip, because this membrane is insanely slimy, and if you'll grip this with a paper towel you actually have some grip. And if you just pull here, that membrane will just come peeling right off as you see being demonstrated. There's our membrane, and we'll just obviously get rid of it. That membrane doesn't allow the smoke to actually penetrate through the meat at that point, so you're going to be missing out on a lot of flavor if you don't get that membrane off. Now that we have the membrane off of these ribs, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go through here and cut off a lot of this excess meat, and do a process of kind of what they call squaring off the ribs, so you can kind of feel and see where those bones are and the way they run throughout the rack. And you're not really supposed to have any meat that doesn't have rib in it. So this whole big triangle shaped part right here, we're just going to take that right off. We have bone that comes up all right here. And then of course you want to just go through and trim off some of this fat, and right here I am on the actual bone side, and you'll see I'm just going to come through here with the sharp knife and just kind of fillet some of this this fatty looking meat off. I mean, you want a little bit of fat, gives you a lot of flavor and taste, but we just don't want a whole lot of it. Peel this up a little bit and slice right through it, get rid of that fat. Now I'm going to flip over on meat side, and you'll notice right here we've got a whole bunch of this kind of nasty fat at the end here. Gonna do our best to kind of remove as much as that as we can. Like I said, a little bit definitely is not going to hurt us. Alright, so once you get to a satisfactory level in your trimming, you want to go ahead and break out your rub. And what I am going to be using today is a rib rub made by Fiesta. Fiesta makes all kinds of spices, and I really like this stuff. I'll link it in the description, but also I have to be honest with you guys, probably my absolute favorite rub I've used on these ribs so far is a barbecue rub known as Chupacabra. So I will link this Fiesta Rib Rub, which is really, really good, and the Chupacabra rub down in the description of this video. So you want to liberally apply this rub onto these ribs, and what I always do is I'm always sure to hold it 10 to 12 inches high off of the ribs, because you just get more coverage that way. And there's really no absolute perfect way to do it, but what I do is I go around the edges as you see, and then I go down the middle, and I am doing bone side right now. And then after we get this rub on here on this one side, we're actually going to let this sit just like this for 30 minutes. Then we'll come back, flip over to the meat side, and then liberally apply the rub again and let that sit for 30 minutes. So that's just kind of a little tip there, to do 30 minutes one side, flip them 30 minutes the other side, and then they'll be ready to go on the grill. Okay, now that 30 minutes have gone by, we're going to flip over to the meat side and do exactly what we did to the bone side with our rub. Now that we have applied our rub to the other side, which is the meat side in this case, we're gonna let that sit for 30 minutes, and I'm gonna go ahead and go out to my pellet smoker and set it to 275 degrees to get it preheated and ready for these to go on here in 30 minutes. So it has been 2.5 hours, of course cooking at 275 degrees with the hickory pellets. We're gonna open this up and we're gonna check, and I am seeing exactly what I like to see, a dark, rich, kind of mahogany red color tint to these ribs. So now it is time to pull them off, take them inside, and we're going to come up with a little conglomeration, and we're gonna wrap these up in foil, stick them back in the Traeger at 275 for 2 more hours. So make sure that you actually lay down 2 pieces of foil, a double layer of foil to wrap your ribs in. So as you can see, we have our brown sugar laid out, and what you want to do as far as how much, you can kind of just get a feel for it as you do it. You may want a little more to make them a little more sweet, or a little less for a little less sweet. But as far as the kind of the width here, you want to do them about the width of the rack of ribs or just a little bit shorter. Then from there, what I like to do is use some European butter, and you can lay out about 4 or 5 little portions of it. I'm going to lay out 5 here. Kind of even it out. After the butter, we just want to get us some good old honey, and I just kind of do a little bead of it just right down the middle, once down and once back. And then the last thing you want to do is get whatever rub you used, and we're just going to sprinkle a little bit of rub on top to give it some more of that flavor there. All right, so now this is the important step when you go to wrap these ribs. Make sure that you put the meat side down on top of that to where what you're looking at is bone side up. And what that's going to do, it's going to allow the meaty side of our ribs to kind of just marinate in all this deliciousness that we put under here. Then of course what we want to do is just wrap these up and try to wrap them as tight as you can. Just like that on both ends coming up, and then just find the ends and then just get them good and wrapped. And then of course we are going to make sure that when we put these back in here, we want to put them again where the meat side is down, so the meaty part of the ribs are making contact with all of the brown sugar, butter, honey, and the rub. Now we're gonna let that go for another 2 hours, and then it'll be time to cut them up and eat. All right, well at this point it has been 2.5 hours with our ribs wrapped in foil. So at this point I'm going to actually just kind of peel this foil back and check them out and give them the old eye test. And as you can see, we've got about once you get to about a 1/4 inch pull back on those bones are really starting to come out. These things are definitely ready to come off. And so these are gonna be just so tender, and that knife is just gonna slice right through them, and they are going to be absolutely falling off the bone. Now, I am far from a slicing or cutting expert, but I do know that a tip that helps really well, if you'll keep them here on bone side up, you can obviously see the bones much better. So therefore, you can just take your knife and you can just slice in between each of the bones. And like I said, those are they are extremely, extremely tender, just falling off the bone. So I am definitely pleased with the presentation, how these turned out as far as the eye test goes, and cannot wait to try these bad boys.